Hi everyone, welcome to the first AutoCAD workshop module. We'll be running through the basics of AutoCAD here. If you've used it before, this may be a bit slow, but I recommend you watch just to ensure you're setting up your files with best practices. On the screen at the moment you'll see AutoCAD 2020. This is probably the one that's installed on the university computers, but if it's not that one, don't worry about that. Everything should apply just the same if it's 2019 or 2021. Your icons and menus might just look slightly different, but should be fine to follow along. You're also able to download a student version of AutoCAD from the Autodesk website, which I would recommend that you do and install before starting this walkthrough if you're working from home. The other thing you'll see on the screen at the moment are little icons. So the little mouse is just showing you what I'm doing with our mouse at all times, and the keyboard is giving you an understanding of what I'm doing with my keyboard, just so you can follow along a little bit easier. First things first, we're going to make a new file. So we go up to the big A, top left-hand corner, that's our file button, and then down to new. When we create a new file in AutoCAD, we use a drawing template file. This stores some basic default settings, styles, and random AutoCAD data in the background, which means it's really important that we're picking the right one, because otherwise you can actually end up working in inches or with some strange settings in the background that's going to mess you up later. So make sure we're picking AutoCAD ISO DWT. That's going to be your metric units basic drawing template file. So a little bit of an explanation about the interface that we've got here. So up the top we've got what we'll call the ribbon. This is where we're keeping all our tools that are going to enable us to do our drawing. We've got tabs that have other tools in here as well. We will run through each of these as we come to them. Below that we've got our drawing space. So this is where we do all of our drawing. This is model space at the moment. There's an equivalent that is called paper space. The model space that you're seeing at the moment is a one-to-one drawing, so whatever we draw here, it's going to be one-to-one scale. It's going to be life size. You can tell that it's one-to-one because down here in what we call the status bar, we've got a one-to-one scale showing here. The status bar is also giving us some other indication of the status of different settings that's going on in the background. Again, we'll run through each of these as we come to them. Centrally, we've got the command bar. So this is where we type in our commands. They allow us to do shortcuts to get to the tools that are up the top, this type of thing. It's also going to give you an indication of what to do next when you're in the middle of a process. These tabs that we've got down here as well, so we've got a model tab and then we've got our layout tabs. We'll come to those in a little bit. The last thing that I want to talk about in our workspace here is the properties panel. So this currently isn't showing. We're going to bring that up by typing properties and then hitting enter. That brings up our properties panel. So this is going to give us additional information about what we're drawing and what we're seeing. We'll come to the detail of it in a bit. I just want to make sure that it's up there so that when we need to talk about it, it's there. It's also just going to it is one of the things that ends up being one of the most important things that you're interacting with in AutoCAD, and I want to make sure that you guys start to get used to its appearance and its use. The first and most basic tool that we're going to be using is the line tool. So up in the ribbon, within the home tab, within the drawing panel, we've got line. When we click on line, the command bar is telling us that we are using that tool. It's telling us to specify a first point. So if we click once, we are defining the first point. If we click again, we are defining the second point of that line. Then if you click enter, you complete that line. The other way to start using any tool in AutoCAD is to use shortcuts. So when you begin to type in AutoCAD, it will automatically type into your command bar at the bottom. That command bar lets you start using tools. It lets you engage a tool. So if you type the word line, you can see that it's giving you lots of different options for tools. All of those tools you can find in the ribbon or in any of these tabs, but it's much easier to just know the name of a tool, type the name of a tool, hit enter. We are now using that line tool. It's again telling us to specify that first point in a line. If at any point you make a mistake in AutoCAD or you want to cancel using a tool, so I've engaged line tool here. I actually don't want to draw a line. I'm going to hit escape. That cancels out of that tool. The other way that you can use the command bar to begin using a tool is by using the shortcut. So I just type the entire word line. Each tool also has a shortcut, so I can just type L for line. That's the shortcut for line. I can hit enter after that. Again, you can see I have engaged the line tool. It's telling me to specify my first point again. I can click once, I can click again, I can click again and it will create another line. When I'm done, I can hit enter or I can hit escape. Now that we've got these three lines here, we want to be able to interact with them. So at the moment, if you look at your property panels, you can see that we've got no selection here. So to select an object, you can hover over it. You can see that it highlights. If you click once, you are then selecting that object. Your properties panel is then telling you all about that specific object. You know it's a line. These are the settings that are associated with that line. You can hover over another one. You can add it to that selection. Now both of these lines are selected, and you know that because this says line and 2. To deselect an object, you hit escape, that deselects everything. The other option you have for selecting things is with an area selection rather than with an individual selection. If you click once on empty space, you're given a square, and then you can click again, and everything within that square is then selected. You can see here we've got line 3. All 3 of the lines that we've created have been selected. Escape to deselect. The other thing to be aware of when you are selecting with an area select is the direction that you are dragging. So when I click once in empty space and then I move to select, to drag over an area to select, you'll see that when you move from right to left and left to right, you get a different coloured square. So when you're dragging and you're getting that green coloured square, you're moving from the right to the left-hand side of the page, that selection area is going to select anything that's even partially within that area. You can see both of those lines are being highlighted there in preparation for selection. When you move from the left to the right and you get a blue square, you're only going to be selecting things that are fully within that area. So you can see as I move and I stop fully covering that smallest line, it stops highlighting to be prepared for selection. So just be conscious that there's a more specific way to select smaller numbers of things within an area when you're going from left to right with that blue select, whereas the left to right selection is going to select anything that it's touching at all. The next way that we're going to be interacting with our workspace is by zooming and panning. So once we've drawn some objects, we need to be able to navigate around them. This is done using the scroll wheel. When you scroll with your scroll wheel, you can zoom out or you're going to be zooming in. You can look at the little mouse icon on the screen to see that correlation. If you click and hold your mouse wheel and then you drag, you're going to be panning so you can reframe around your objects as well. The other zooming shortcut that you want to know about will be when you are zooming out or zooming in, if you double click your mouse scroll wheel, you will zoom extents, which will just zoom to everything that you have in your drawing fully covered. The other way to zoom extents is by using the zoom tool. So the shortcut Z and then enter will bring up all of these different options for zooming. So you've got all, you've got center, you've got extents. This will give you that more specific control over a shortcut for zooming if you get lost within your file. Now, the other thing you need to think about when you're drawing objects in AutoCAD is the precision of what you're drawing. The 3 lines that we have on the screen at the moment, I drew randomly. I have no idea what length they are. I have no idea what angle they're drawn at. They're just random lines to get us used to drawing the line tool. The thing with AutoCAD is that you are typically always drawing a construction document of some kind, so precision is really critical when we're drawing in AutoCAD. You should always know how long something is and what angle you're drawing it at. So we're going to delete these lines and then we're going to move forward with the way that you draw precisely using the line tool. To erase something in AutoCAD, we use the erase tool. So up a new ribbon, within the Home tab, within the Modify panel, the little pencil with the eraser on the end is your erase tool. So if we click that icon, we are then engaged with the erase tool. You can see down the bottom we've got erase and it's telling us to select objects. So like we were before, we can hover over something and we can click. That object is then selected. You can also click an empty space and you'll be given your area select, so you can select more than one object at once. Once you've selected the objects that you want to erase, you can hit enter that then finalizes that erase tool, and they're erased. To undo something that you've done in AutoCAD, you can Control Z, like with most programs. You've also got the option of using the arrows up the top here to click forward and backwards and look at all of your previous options to redo or undo. The other option we have to engage the erase tool is, of course, to type the word erase. That then gives us the option to engage erase with the enter button, and you can tell that we have done so because it's giving us erase and it's telling us to select objects. The other option we have is to use the shortcut for erase, which is E, enter. Again, it's telling us to select the objects, and we can hit enter to finalize the erase. So now that we've learnt how to draw a line, we are going to learn how to draw a line precisely. As I've said, drawing lines precisely in AutoCAD is very important, and the first task that we're going to step through here is drawing our floor plan. So we need to be able to be confident that we can and are drawing lines that are corresponding with the dimensions that are set out on this drawing. Now, the first step to drawing a precise line here is to make sure that we've got dynamic input on. So your dynamic input may have been on by default, and so you may have had a slightly different look of command bar during the first part of this. For those that didn't have it on, if you pick the little hamburger free line symbol in the bottom right hand corner and pop up to dynamic input, that then adds this little symbol in that status bar and allows us to toggle dynamic input on and off. So when dynamic input is on, what you'll find is that your command bar is associated with your cursor, and there are a few more options when we go to draw a line. So we're going to engage our line tool by typing L and then enter. It's asking us to specify a first point, and it's asking us near with the cursor, and it's still asking us down here in the command bar. So if at any point you're a bit lost with where you are in the stepping through with a tool, you can always look at your command bar and it should be giving you a little clue. So the first point that we're going to specify here is 0, 0. So rather than picking a random point, we're going to specify this as the base point for the file. You can see that it is sitting right at the intersection of our red and green base point lines of the file. You see there's a little bit different information showing now that we've got dynamic input on. We've got our length showing there, and we've got our angle showing there as well. So we want to be drawing a line that's 8400 long, and we want it to be straight along the base here. At the moment, we've got polar tracking on, so that's this here. So what you find, if we turn that off, this will stop snapping at specific angles. So we're going to type in 8400, and then we're going to hit tab. We'll zoom out. So we now have a line that is locked at 8400, and because we've hit tab, we're now looking at inputting that angle at that point. We want that to be straight along the bottom x-axis at 0. Enter. We now know that that is an 8400 long line at 0 degrees. Enter again to engage and finalize that line. Now if we have a quick review of our plan, we've just done our 8400 line here. We're going to now come down, which is going to be a 2390. We're going to come across with a 3590. We're going to come up, which is not this 8630 because that's minus the length of these, the width of the walls on the end. This wall is actually the 9110, and we're going to come along, which is our full length 11990, and then we'll come down here, which is our 6720. Now, before we engage the line tool again, what we're going to do is ensure that we have object snaps on. So object snaps or snap to objects is something that will help ensure our preciseness of our drawing. So in our status bar, we've got a little square with another little square next to it. When you hover over it, it should say object snap. It should be on by default, but just make sure it's highlighted and that it is on. And then we're just going to check what we've got on by default. We want to make sure that we've got endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, and extension on. The others are sometimes useful and you can experiment with them. What I would recommend you never put on is nearest, because what that does is reduce any preciseness that the snap tool is actually giving you, because it will just snap to anything that exists rather than snapping to an endpoint or any of these other points that you specified. Now that we've ensured that that is on, we're going to engage our line tool, L for line. When we now hover over this endpoint, you can see that we're getting that little green square and it's saying endpoint. That's how we know that we are snapping to the endpoint of that line in a precise manner. So we're going to click once and then engage line tool. We want to go down our 2390 and we want to do it at 90 degrees. Enter. Now, rather than hitting enter and then using the line tool again, we're just going to stay within the line tool and go all the way around the perimeter of the building, like I said before. So we're going to go over that 3590. We're going to do that at 0 degrees. Okay. Then we're going to come up 9110, and we're going to do that at 90 degrees straight up. Boom. And then we're going to come across in this direction, the 11990 tab, doing that at 180 flat. Nice and neat. And then at this point, we could come down and just snap to here. But what I want you to do is actually type in the 6720, and we're going to come down at 90 degrees and hit enter, and then enter to end. And we're doing that because this point should meet nice and even, and it is, because we've drawn all of these very precisely. If you draw that line and it doesn't meet up neatly here, it means you've made an error at some point as you've come around. So it's good practice to always type it in rather than snap if there's an option, because what it will do is highlight any errors that you've accidentally made in your drawing. Another status bar tool that will increase your precision is orthogonal locking, or ortho mode. So down in the status bar, fifth one along, you've got a little right angle, which is ortho mode. As you can see, it says there, it restricts your cursor orthogonally when it's on. So if we turn that on, we draw a line. When we draw that now, it's locking into 0 and 90 degrees only. So if you're drawing something that's only right angles, that's going to help you be very precise with only ever drawing a 90 or a 0 degree line. We're now going to run through the remaining tools that you are going to be using during your AutoCAD process. First off is the Move tool. Move tool can be found in the ribbon, Home tab, Modify panel. First one, top left, Move. You can also engage the Move tool by typing Move or by using the shortcut, which is M. You can see once we've engaged the Move tool, it's telling us to select objects. So we need to select the objects that we want to move and then press enter. We then need to specify a base point for the move, which can be on the object or in empty space. You then have 3 different options to define the endpoint for this move. You can single click again in empty space, which is obviously a non-precise way to move. It's a random distance that we're not specifying. At the moment, we've got ortho on, so at least it's locked in a 90 degree or 0 angle. We can also input a numerical distance. So if we want to move it specifically 5 meters, we can type 5,000 and then hit enter. We know that that has moved exactly 5 meters in that 0 degree direction. We can also move by using snap. So if we specify that as the base point, we can then use snap to define the endpoint. Almost exactly the same as the Move tool is the Copy tool. It's located up in the ribbon within the Modify panel. Copy, right under Move there. So obviously we can click on that to begin to copy. It's then telling us to select objects. Alternatively, we can type copy, or we can use the shortcut, which is CO. Once we've engaged the Copy tool, we need to select the objects. We don't need to be selecting all of the objects, we can just be selecting part of this perimeter because each of these lines is a separate object. Once we've selected the objects that we want to copy, hit enter and it's asking us to specify a base point. Again, this can be on the object or empty space. If we pick on the object, it's then asking us to specify a second point. If we want to do this in a precise manner, we can type a distance in. So we could type in 500. Because we've moved upwards direction first, once we hit enter, that's now created a copy of that line 500 in that direction. It's also giving us the option to snap. So you can see here, that's precisely a continuation of that line because it has snapped to it. When you hover over other elements, so over here it's giving us a little triangle. That's snapping to a midpoint. That little cursor is then telling you midpoint. So you can snap to midpoints. And then enter or escape to end. And of course, we can delete those copies using the erase tool. E, shortcut. Next tool that you'll need to know is the rotate tool. So you can rotate objects in your drawing around a specified base point. Up in your ribbon, again in the modify panel, you've got rotate to the right of move. So of course we can click on rotate and it's engaged the rotate tool, or we can type rotate, or we can use the shortcut, which is RO. Once we've engaged the tool, it's asking us to select the object, so we want to select the object that we want to rotate, and then hit enter. It's then asking you to specify a base point. So if we select the end of that line, it's then wanting to rotate from that point. Now, because we've had ortho on, it's only giving you the option to rotate in 90-degree increments. We can turn off ortho mode, and then that's a much clearer indication of the ability to rotate. We can specify an angle here. So if we want to do this in a precise manner, we would type in 45 and enter. We now know that that line is 45 degrees from where it originally sat. The other alternative is rotate. We're going to select that object. We're going to select the midpoint this time. So now you can see that it's rotating around that center point. You can also use the snap to decide the angle rather than typing in a specific angle, though typing in an angle is obviously going to be your more precise option here in most instances. The next tool we're going to run through is the offset tool. So the offset tool is one that you will use quite a bit of. It's located up in the ribbon. Within the modify tab, it's the bottom right hand corner icon, the one that looks like a U, sideways U. Or of course we can type offset, or we can use the shortcut, which is just O. What the offset tool does is create a copy of a line a specified distance away from it. So if we, the first step we have to do is, as the command bar is saying, we need to specify this offset distance. So let's pop in 500 as an example. It's then asking us to select the object to offset. So we'll pick this, and then we get to select a side, the point on side to offset from. So like we copied this object up 500 earlier, we can use the offset tool to also offset it 500. However, in this instance, if we look at our floor plan, the most useful use of the offset tool is going to be to create our wall thickness. We know our wall thickness is 240 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is Control Z to undo that. I'm going to go back into the offset tool. I'm going to specify 240 as the offset distance. I'm going to offset each of these lines internally, being sure not to accidentally offset one outside, always inside. That way we've started to get our wall thickness complete. Next tool we're going to run through is the trim tool. So the trim tool allows us to trim objects so that they end precisely at boundary edges that are defined by other objects. So for instance, we don't want these two little bits of this line to go through here. We want it to kind of end at this intersection point. So we're going to use the trim tool, which is located up in your ribbon, in your modify, trim, it's the little scissors. Or of course, we can type trim, or we can use the shortcut, which is TR. Once we've engaged the trim tool, it's asking us to select objects. So it's, and above you can see that it's saying select cutting edges. So if you think about, we want to cut these lines at the point that they're intersecting, we need to be selecting those two lines. After we've selected those objects, we can hit enter. It's then asking us what we want to trim. So you can see when you hover, it's giving you the option to cut away a section of that line that is being defined by the intersection point of those two lines. The other tool that we can use to start neatening up these corners is the Fillet Tool. So Fillet is also located up in your ribbon, in your Modify tab, just below Trim. You've got Fillet. You can see that the icon is two lines being joined by a radius. So if we engage Fillet Tool, we can obviously use the icon, or we can type Fillet, or we can use the shortcut, which is just F. Fillet is asking us to select the first object. We select one, it's then asking us to select the second object, and you can see that it is joining those two objects like that, neatening that up. When we're in the Fillet tool, we can also, down in the status bar, you can see there's some options that we've got here. If we click on radius, we can specify a fillet radius. So our fillet radius is currently 0, which is why it's giving us a right angle join. If we type 200, for instance, and then we come in and we specify the first object and then the second object, you can see it's created a join that using a radius of 200 to create a curve. Of course, we don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo that. So we've just got a nice right angle curve. The last modify tool that we're going to run through today is the extend tool. The extend tool is associated with trim, and that's why we'll find it hiding underneath the trim in the ribbon. So the little arrow next to the trim icon in the ribbon will find extend. Of course, we can type extend, or we can use the shortcut, which is EX. Once we've engaged the extend tool, we need to define the boundary of the object. So the boundary that we are extending to. So if we select this as our boundary object and then hit enter, we then need to select the objects that we want to extend to it. So for instance, we can extend this one. It gives you a little preview when you hover, or we could extend this one. Once you click on them, it extends those lines out. So these lines are now longer than they were before, and they are longer to the point where they've extended to that boundary line that we defined. We can then use the fillet tool to neaten these guys back up. And we can continue to use the fillet tool all the way around. To repeat the last tool that you used, you can just hit enter, or you can hit space again. That will repeat the previous tool that you used automatically, and that will allow us to have this nice, neat outline boundary for our floor plan. So that is all of the tools that you are going to need to be able to finish drawing the line work for both your floor plan here and your section here. So if you omit the text and the dimensions that's on here, all of this can be drawn using the line tool and the offset tool, the trim tool, all of the stuff we've gone through previously in this workshop, except for this door swing because it's a curve. So we're going to run through the circle tool, and then we're going to do a speed run through where I'll just show you my process for using all of those tools to draw the remainder of this floor plan in this section. So circle tool can be found up in the ribbon. In the draw panel, we're creating not a line, not a polyline, we're creating a circle. So we can click on that icon, and we're given, we've engaged the circle tool. Alternatively, we can type circle, or we can use the shortcut, which is just C. Once we've engaged the circle tool, it's telling us to specify a center point for a circle. So we can pick, we can snap to something if we wanted, or we can pick empty space, and then it's giving us our circle. Of course, we can specify a radius for this, and when we draw a line, because we've got snap to center on, we're able to snap to the center of this line. So we're able to use that to define parts of the door. So we'll be able to use that tool, the circle tool, when it comes to drawing that door. The last thing we're going to do before we say goodbye is save our file. So we're going to go up to the big A, we're going to go save as. Going to name this workshop task 1. I would recommend getting into the habit of hitting Control S at regular intervals while you're using AutoCAD. AutoCAD has a tendency to randomly crash, and if you're not hitting save at regular intervals, you are going to lose work, which is always really sad when that happens. So make sure that you're trying to get into that habit of saving randomly. So in preparation for workshop number 2, we're going to finish up the line work for both the plan and the section drawing. We're going to use the offset tool a lot, we're going to use trim a lot. All of the tools that we've gone through today are going to enable us to finish up the line work for both of these drawings. The remainder of this recording is just going to be me doing a quick speed run through. I'm not going to narrate it, but it's going to be an example for you as to one way to go about drawing the rest of this line work. We'll talk to you in workshop 2.